Good morning, readers. Today we will be discussing attending to minor characters. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and get out your reading, learning, intention sheet, fill in the date, and the book that you are reading, which should be your historical fiction book. Today as a reader, I am working on thinking about minor characters. I want you to take a second and think. If you were to show someone around our school, what would you show them? Give me a thumb up after you've thought about this for a second and you have some ideas. Go ahead and share this with your partner now. Readers, I have a feeling that maybe you would have showed them our classroom, you would have showed them the art room, the gym, the music room. And I'm sure there were a few other things like the playground and where we keep our playground equipment that you mentioned. And I was thinking about this myself and the places I might show someone if I were showing them around the school. And so this is Mrs. Ware's list. I would show them the office and the bathrooms. I would show them the gym and our classroom. I would also show them the library. And I would show them the copy room, because I would assume that they would need to know where that was too. I'm assuming that maybe you had some of the same things on your list, but not all of the same things. And the reason that we have different lists is that we have different points. This is the same as our characters in our books. They have different points of view. That means that they see things differently. And one way that we can find big ideas or figure out a theme is to reread a story and think about different characters' points of view. We especially need to consider minor characters, and minor characters are characters who don't play as big of a role in the story. So when we're thinking about Number the Stars, one of the minor characters that comes to mind is Uncle Henrik, or Peter. So when we're talking about perspective, we need to ask ourselves these questions. Whose eyes are seeing this story? Whose thoughts am I hearing? And whose voice is telling the story? We're going to practice this with numbers. Right now, I want you to think about who's telling the story. Turn and tell your partner right now. Readers, I would also like you to think about whose thoughts you're hearing when you're reading this story, or when we're reading the story. Turn and tell your partner that right now. Readers, I'm betting that you said that you could imagine, or that Anne-Marie was telling the story and that we were hearing her thoughts. And you're most certainly right. But as skilled readers, we also need to think about the other characters in the story and their points of view. I'm going to read you a passage from Number the Stars, and this is a conversation between Anne-Marie and her Uncle Henrik. Anne-Marie has just realized that the sad event of Aunt Bertie's funeral is a lie, so she goes to her Uncle Henrik in the barn where he's milking the cow. All we know about the uncle is that he's an unmarried fisherman. But let's think about how he has a different perspective than Anne-Marie as I read this. As I read the passage, actually step into Uncle Henrik's shoes. Imagine that you are him for a moment. Anne-Marie wandered into the barn where Uncle Henrik was milking Blossom. He was kneeling on the straw-covered floor beside the cow, his shoulder pressed against her heavy side. Anne-Marie leaned against the ancient, splintery wood of the barn and listened to the sharp, rattling sound of the streams of milk as they hit the side of the bucket. Uncle Henrik glanced over at her and smiled without pausing in the rhythm of milking. He didn't say anything. I'm going to pause right there, and I want you to think about what Uncle Henrik is thinking. Give me a thumb up when you've thought of what he might be thinking as he sees Anne-Marie come into the barn. I thought about this, and I thought, you know, he's probably thinking, I'm busy milking the cow. I've got a lot on my mind. What's going on with Anne-Marie? Why is she coming in here? But I noticed that Uncle Henrik does make a point of smiling at Anne-Marie. And so I'm thinking that he might be trying to hide his worries, because we know that he probably has a lot on his mind, since we know everything else that is going on in Number the Stars. Readers, I'm going to read another passage. Again, I want you to think as though you're Uncle Henrik. Even close your eyes if you need to. Through the barn window, the pinkish light of sunset fell in irregular shapes upon the stacked hay. Flecks of dust and straw floated there in the light. Uncle Henrik, Anne-Marie said suddenly, her voice cold, "You are lying to me, you and Mama both." His strong hands continued, deftly pressing like a pulse against the cow. The steady streams of milk still came. He looked at her again, his deep blue eyes kind and questioning. "You are angry," he said. He seems to be pretty calm. I'm thinking that he might have been expecting Anne-Marie to come out here to confront him on Aunt Bertie. He knows that Anne-Marie's smart. I think that he is thinking about what he's going to say to Anne-Marie and how he's going to say it. Now I'm going to continue reading. "Yes, Mama has never lied to me before, never. But I know there is no great Aunt Bertie. Never once in all the stories I've heard, in all the old pictures I've seen, has there been a great Aunt Bertie." Uncle Henrik sighed. Readers, I'm imagining that right now Uncle Henrik is thinking, oh, great. I really do need to tell her something about this. How am I going to tell her what's going on without telling her everything? I'm going to keep reading, readers. At last he turned to Anne-Marie as he wiped his own hands with the cloth. "How brave are you, little Anne-Marie?" he asked suddenly. All right, readers, now it's your turn. I'm going to read a passage, and then you are going to turn and talk with your reading partner about what Uncle Henrik might be thinking. She was startled and dismayed. It was a question she did not want to be asked. When she asked it of herself, she did not like her own answer. "Not very," she confessed, looking at the floor. "All right, go ahead and talk to your partner. What is Uncle Henrik thinking? Pretend you are him, and you are saying his thoughts out loud." Readers, I'm going to continue to read, and as I do, I want you to remember everything you know about Uncle Henrik. I want you to remember that he's an adult, that he's a fisherman, and that he's Anne-Marie's uncle as you're thinking about what must be going on in his head. All right. Tall Uncle Henrik knelt before her so that his face was level with hers. "I think that is not true," Uncle Henrik said. "I think you are like your mama, and like your papa, and like me, frightened, but determined. And if the time came to be brave, I'm quite sure you would be very, very brave." All right, readers, turn and talk. What might he be thinking? All right, readers, I'm going to read one last passage. "But," he added, "it is much easier to be brave if you do not know everything. And so your mama does not know everything, neither do I. We only know what we need to know." "Do you understand what I am saying?" he asked, looking into her eyes. All right, readers, think what he is thinking. What do we know about Uncle Henrik? Use that to help you. Turn one last time and talk to your partner. Readers, we have a purpose in thinking about the minor characters, and that purpose is to help us consider the big ideas and the themes in the story. So I want to go back to what we talked about last Thursday, and that's that war makes children grow up fast. I want you to think about everything that Uncle Henrik is saying to Anne-Marie and what he must be thinking. Does that support the idea that war makes children grow up fast? Let's turn and talk with our partners about that. Readers, today as you read, you are going to think about perspective. You're going to think about whose eyes are seeing the story, whose thoughts are you hearing when you're reading the story, and whose voice is telling the story. Let's make it a great reading day.